So here I'm going to start talking about ISLM liquidity traps. This all starts in the money market, right? We have a money market where the central bank controls the amount of money they put into the economy. The cost of holding money is the nominal interest rate, and we assume that this money demand function, PTMD, goes asymptotic at the zero lower bound. The reason being that nobody would ever want to hold negative yield bonds. Cash at zero would be a strictly superior asset to a negative yield bond. And so money demand just goes exponential because there's no reason to hold financial assets. This generates a corresponding LM curve, right, where we get this flat part of the LM curve. And this flat part of the LM curve in our space is now at negative pi e. And similarly, we get an aggregate demand curve in price output space that has a corresponding kink. So the liquidity trap here is all of these parts together, right? It is the flat part of the PTMD curve, it is the flat part of the LM curve, it is the flat part of the aggregate demand curve, and the idea being here is that it is impossible to lower rates, and that means that minus pi e is minimum, and that means there's a limit to Y stimulus, right, via R. Right? You can only lower the interest rate so much, and if you can only lower the interest rate so much, you can only stimulate output so much. So if I fill in the rest of this picture now, I have an IS curve, I have an aggregate supply curve reflecting a price assumption, and I'm off to the races. So the classic sort of example that happens here that generates a liquidity trap is some sort of big IS shock. This could be consumption, investment, or government spending. In the open economy model, you could have a... why is it doing that? You could have a... Sorry, you could have an X shock as well. So when I have a big IS shock, I'm going to shift the IS curve in dramatically. Right? Massive IS shock throws us into the liquidity trap, which means that because money demand is a function of Y, this means less money demand. The economy doesn't need as much liquidity. We end up with a big incoming money demand shock. We end up at the zero lower bound. We end up at the zero lower bound. And the aggregate demand curve is shifting in so that we end up looking something, sorry, I don't know why it's grabbing that axis. Why is it? Whatever. The aggregate demand curve is shifting in, and we are in the vertical part of the aggregate demand intersection here. So here in this liquidity trap, what normally happens is that we're in a recession. And in the recession, that means that the price is high relative to the real wage. That's my sticky price assumption. And so what happens is that prices start to fall through competition, right? And so the prices start to fall. That's the aggregate supply curve coming down. And the price falling means that the PTMD curve is going to fall even further. So this PTMD curve that we've got over there is going to fall even further. But that PTMD curve falling even further doesn't get us off the zero lower bound, right? It's only shifting the LM curve out further. So we remain pretty firmly stuck at this level of Y, right? No matter how far the aggregate supply curve slopes down, we end up stuck at this level of Y, which is happening because the price level falling doesn't give you any action on interest rates, and therefore if you're not getting any action on consumption investment. So we simply end up being stuck at the zero lower bound, at the zero lower bound, at the zero lower bound, right?